Welcome to today's podcast. Before I begin the podcast, I have a bit of an update. Because my system had some issues, I had to record this podcast over Microsoft Teams, and hence you will experience some volume drops and some issues with audio. I apologize for that. Hopefully, the next time I won't face any issues and I will be able to resume normal services. So, with that out of the way, let's begin. Is this on? Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of Is This On podcast. I'm your host, Karthi.
In today's podcast, I have a very interesting and influential guy, an upcoming music artist and a music producer as well, I guess. He is not only a good friend of mine, but also my colleague. Not only he is a brilliant and smart worker, he is also a very creative person. So just so that you know the kind of person he is, let me give a bit of an elaborative info about him. His name is Eashwar Subramanian. He has been an ambient music producer for almost 5 years, and his work has been extensively used as background music for various meditation apps and for various high level dignitary functions. Recently, his work was chosen by the British Council of India in collaboration with DJ Collective Cove and Co. Featured his track as part of the South Asian Heritage Month. This mix was released as part of the Indian Independence Day celebration by the British Council. He has also been recognized and covered by various news media such as Rolling Stone India, New Indian Express, and that too quite extensively. Eashwar has produced over 300 records over the past 5 years and released 3 albums: Ambient, Hamlet, Polar Drift, and Across the River. His work, Ambient Hamlet, has been featured on the Stasis Report playlist by Mark Weidenbaum, a noted ambient music critic and author of selected works of Aphex Twin. His recent release, Random Hues, is also been receiving a lot of praise from a lot of people. So I think you understand the kind of person I have with me here. Welcome to my podcast, Ishwar.
Thank you, Kathy, for those kind words. And I'm happy to be part of this podcast today and look forward to having a discussion with you.
Great, Ishwar. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time and being here with me. So, Ishwar, so let's begin, right? So, can you just like share how did your this music journey begin? How did it all begin, right? Where did it start?
Yeah, so I had my earliest music lessons when I was perhaps 10 or 12. That is about being from a typical upper middle class Tamil family. We it was a kind of a rite of passage that you enroll in a Carnatic music class and
Yeah.
take up some music lessons. And that is how I got initiated into music. So I learned some basic Carnatic, and then after that, I was exposed to different competitions in music, predominantly around vocal music. And slowly, the interest kind of caught on to me. And around the time that around the late 90, around 93, 94, that was when A.R. Rahman, the genius music producer and composer,
Oh,
he had made his inroads into Tamil cinema, and his music had kind of really attracted
mhm.
me towards pursuing music as a career, perhaps. And then I tried to start taking music seriously to the point of, almost flunking my ninth standard exams. And then I was like, I had to kind of put my music education in the back burner and focus more on the education, because my parents got worried silly that, this guy, if he just goes down this path, he's not really going to make much of himself. So I went about doing the road thing of doing your degree, and then they went to Banaras and did post graduation in genetics, and it was
Wow.
during these times that while I was doing my degree in Coimbatore and in biotech, and again the genetics degree in postgraduate degree in Banaras Hindu University, I was again exposed to a lot of the music culture in both these places, right? So we used to have these college bands and college music festivals. So I used to kind of actively participate in those activities, more as a singer. But then it was
Wow.
again, yeah,
So
it
you were
was
a singer?
again. Yeah, so
You
yeah, I used to initially start with singing. So I used to do a bit of singing. Not that it's been very great, but I used to do a bit of singing, and we used to have a small, makeshift band where it would be me and another colleague of mine. We would improvise beats and then kind of develop some medley and stuff like that, and that was it. But it was more of a touch and go kind of thing. It was not very consistent. So but then after my postgraduate degree, again, I spent some time abroad in Hungary, and for a pre-doctoral fellowship, and there again, I kind of worked with some of my classmates there who were from Turkey and Estonia and all these places, and we uh, we kind of did a Beatles show there, wherein we
wow.
just got we just picked up some songs of the Beatles, and we tried to improvise them. And for want of a better person, I was roped in to sing the Beatles songs, and then we did have our colleagues and students, my classmates basically, who were basically playing the darbuka, which is a Turkish drum instrument, and the guitar, and a couple of these instruments. And we did a show there, more for that institute that I was working at. But then after that, I came back, and then I got into the road thing of getting into a job, and moved to Chennai after I came back from Hungary, and joined Frost and Sullivan, where again, because being Madras, I was like again, drawn to this idea of pursuing music in the music capital, right?
Right.
And of course, at that time, I was never into instrumental and all that. Again, the idea was to pursue vocals. So fortunately for me, my my mother's my maternal side grandmother, and Bombay, the reputed Carnatic singer Bombay Jayashree's mother had been, close friends during their olden times, and so it so
Wow.
happened that by way of a family connection, I had reached out. We had reached my parents and I. We had kind of reached out to them, and Bombay Jayashree's brother and uncle, agreed to kind of give me some training on classical music. So
Mhm.
I kind of spent a brief time with them trying to learn some kirtanams, and trying to learn some, kind of bring in some finesse in the vocal side. But then, reality kind of caught up soon, and you obviously had to. I had to make a shift to Bangalore for some personal reasons, and while I was here, I couldn't really pursue music as much, and it was more it was more a time pass kind of thing, right? I mean, it was something I was
Right.
doing without really putting in too much of a focus around the whole thing, right? And
Yeah.
things were kind of going around like this, and then while when I joined HP, then I kind of joined HP, and in 2010, and when I was doing the work there and getting used to the thing, we had this, I'm sure you're aware, we had this office fest called Esprit, right? And
Right.
one of the things that was one of the tasks that we actually had was to create a jingle for a, for every team that kind of came out in
Okay.
participated in Esprit, right? And
Oh,
somehow, as one friend of mine, he just randomly threw up my name to other colleagues. He's saying that, hey, you know
okay.
what, this guy does music and all that,
So,
so why don't you
so,
uh,
so was it
just bring
like
him?
they were trying to pull your leg, or was it like they really knew, okay, this guy knows some music, and or was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a random thing, right?
Okay,
Because
just the,
they tried to
but
bring in somebody. That guy said, "Hey, I don't know how to go about all this, but I know this. I know that this guy who's in my team, he can make some music, or he does some singing. So why not?" So
okay,
that was the first time I was like really put on a spot, because office being office, you cannot really
yeah,
back out, and it kind of becomes uh, a tough call, right? So I
right,
had to somehow conjure up some kind of a tune in some way, and that was the first. And at that time, actually, at my house, I still have it. My dad had brought me a Yamaha PSR 740 keyboard from
oh,
Dubai, way back in 98, 99. And so I had that keyboard with me, and it was basically lying around, and I used to, randomly play something on it, and it was like, and there was never real utility there towards music. And then it started, and I decided to enroll myself for piano classes. So
oh, okay,
just about 2 blocks away from my house, there's this piano school where I enrolled myself, and I did attend classes for about 2-3 years.
okay,
Let's try to learn lessons, and I mean, I learned the chords and
mm,
the scales, and more on the Western notation, right? So I learned the piano and predominantly the keyboard. I started playing a bit and tried to get my ropes around it. And as with life, shit always happens, right? It's
right,
never this. So in the meanwhile, again, as I was doing this, of course, in between I got married, and then there was a bit of it kind of got into a mess. So I had kind of left it for some time, and when things had kind of gotten a little hard, I kind of felt that I realized that I should go back to the piano class and kind of get a hold of myself. But then I realized that I'm not really progressing much on the lessons either, because it's like
right,
I'm almost playing the same lesson over and over again, and
okay,
it's not really getting me anywhere. And then I was
okay,
like, hey, come on. But I still wanted to do music, and I felt maybe, a lot of beauty comes from the imperfection that we have. I mean, what we think is an imperfection in one area,
right,
becomes totally perfect for another area. And that was the observation I had, right? I mean, with traditional Western classical music, and with the traditional form of piano playing and all of that, you see, there is a certain technique that has to be applied, right? And
mm,
you need to be very proper in the way you play, and how you design, how you express the notes and all of that. And while I was doing this, one of the other things that kind of hit me was that, and this kind of hit me because I used to also watch a lot of, as I was learning these piano classes, I used to watch a lot of these interviews by Hans Zimmer and A.R. Rahman and all of these big luminaries, right? And
right,
they would basically talk a lot about about their creative process, basically. And that kind of, and one of the things that really struck me was what Hans Zimmer basically told in one of his interviews, right? I mean, he doesn't claim to be a
mm,
trained musician himself, and he said the idea of music or anything, of playing on the piano, is the word play, which means that you basically should have fun when you do play on the piano, right? It's not about being right. It's about having fun while you do it, and it's about creating something.
okay,
And the second aspect that I kind of had, kind of got to me, was that I mean, all the music that we learn to play in the traditional, piano setting is and that was about the time when I used to also look at how all of these in these interviews they would also talk a lot about these about how they produce music, right? And it kind of I was kind of amazed by the kind of software they would use for this music production and all of that. I mean, a lot of these fancy colors you see on their studio screens, and the way they keep playing things and orchestrating and all of that. I mean, it all sounded super fun, right? I mean, you just have a computer and you have the entire studio inside it. And I was like really fascinated by the tech around that. And I thought, hey, you know what? I should, instead of spending my time trying to become a so-called pianist or a concert pianist or something like that, which
Right.
ideally would have taken ages to go go on. I decided to go and do a music production course, and so I went to the school where
So,
that A.R. Rahman's lead guitarist was kind of
so
taking
there
in
is a
for. Yeah.
so sorry to interrupt, Ishwar. So there is an actual school which will teach you how to do music production. So there is a school for that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of schools today that teach you how to produce music. The thing with music production is about how understanding how you design sound. It's also
Okay.
about understanding how do you use music production software, basically. So music production basically
Okay.
means it starts all the way from creating the tone to designing the sound and to ensure to kind of blending all of that together, which is what is called mixing. And then finally the aspect of mastering, where you try to make the sound palatable to the ears by way of
Okay.
fiddling around with some of the parameters on frequencies and reverbs and all of that, and you try to make that sound really nice to hear in the audio, right? And that is what
Okay.
music production is all about. Predominantly, it teaches you the technical aspects of creating
Mhm.
music, right from composing all the way into producing it in a way that can be heard in
Oh,
on any medium, right? So it allows you to create record music. How do you record music? How do you you get them to play, and then you somehow record with a lot of this huge equipment. But
right.
with a lot of this tech coming in, with particularly predominantly with Apple kind of bringing in that breakthrough with Logic and
Right.
as a software, right? I mean, so the what they basically did is that with a lot of the tech advancements, what happened is that all of this work could be could be compressed and organized within the reach of your desktop or your laptop, right? So they
Right.
basically wrote software where you could produce music, you could compose music, produce music, and arrange it in whatever way you want without really spending a dime on a real player per se. And you could
Right.
sit and do this right in
Mm,
your room, right at
mm,
home. You don't really need expensive equipment to produce music, contrary to
right.
what a lot of people believe, that you need huge studios and you need equipments of huge kinds and all that, acoustic
Right.
equipments to be able to do this. You don't really need all that. And
Oh,
it is possible to develop music. Of course, having an acoustic kind of an environment obviously changes the nature of creating music, because it lends a certain kind of authentic sound that you get. So today, if you look at how people produce music, it's all by way of using a digital audio workstation. That's what it is called. It's called a
okay.
DAW, or a digital audio workstation, which is
Okay.
primarily the studio in your computer, right? It is basically a
Okay.
software. It is a music
Hmm.
software, and
Right.
that is there on your computer, and you can basically create magic with that. And
Wow.
in order to do this, all of these softwares are preloaded with sound samples, right? So you have sounds of a violin, you have sounds of the entire orchestra that's available there for you. You have the sounds of the piano, you have electronic beat sounds, you also have something called loops, right? So loops are basically small sections.
So this is like what Apple ships along with their Mac laptops, right?
Yeah. So
GarageBand. Is something similar to GarageBand, but probably much more complex, I guess.
Yeah, so GarageBand is the basic version that of what is called of the professional version called Logic Pro 10, which is purely for Apple, right? And you have similar kinds of software which can run on Windows. There is Reason, there is Reaper, there is Ableton Live, and then you have Cubase. There are a number of music softwares out there, and there are a lot of them which are free also to use, right? You don't really need to pay anything to get it. But then again,
so I think we have digressed a little bit off the course. So you were just talking about you were like you change your focus towards the
music production,
learning music production, exactly.
Well, I think this would be a good place to stop for now. This concludes part 1 of my discussion with Eashwar about his journey into the world of music, his experiences he learned over the years of how to make music, and how he came into this emerging new technology involved in music production. In the second part, we will be hearing more from Eashwar about his tryst with the ambient music genre, his thoughts on whether it could be a new career path for the young, and discuss much more. I thank Anchor.fm for providing a wonderful podcast platform to host some really amazing podcasts, including mine. I would like to thank Eashwar for lending these wonderful tunes called Window Panes as background music for this podcast. Don't forget to check out my other podcast at anchor.fm/Karthi. Until next time, stay tuned, stay safe, catch you in the next one.